Are you keeping your readers interested in your memoir? There are two elements that will help you to achieve this connection. Well, they are fiction techniques, and I'm absolutely not advocating using fiction itself in your memoir. I am advocating using techniques that have proven so successful to fiction writers. But before we get into that, let me introduce myself. I am Denis Ledoux, author of the classic granddaddy of memoir writing books, Turning Memories into Memoirs, and founder of the Memoir Network. I'll have a bonus for you at the end of this video, so stay tuned. Ultimately, of course, every memoir must be factual, and it must be true to the life being written about. A memoir is definitely not fiction, and the writer must not succumb to fiction to get over the hard spots or to make it more interesting, as one of my workshoppers said when challenged about what seemed obviously a piece of fiction inserted into his memoir. This fiction prohibition does not mean that a memoirist cannot use fiction techniques. In fact, fiction techniques like foreshadowing and suspense are at our disposal to make a memoir, your memoir, more interesting. Every successful memoir has to be mindful of not only edifying the reader, but with entertaining the reader sufficiently to have him or her continue reading to the end. A memoir that fails to entertain is perhaps also a memoir that has failed to edify, as the reader will not read the book in its entirety. Now let's look at both foreshadowing and suspense in some detail. Foreshadowing is a suggestion of something to come that the writer did not know about at the time of the story, and that the reader still does not know but understands that the story will eventually reveal the unknown, if only the reader sticks with the story. Here are examples of foreshadowing. When you read, "I little knew what this would mean to me later when I applied for college." Well, the reader is using foreshadowing in this instance. There is no fiction making here, but there is a use of a fiction technique, foreshadowing. The reader will want to know how the item would be of benefit later. The same is true if the writer were to write, "She was not to prove so helpful later at a crucial time when I needed her." Foreshadowing is an effective technique to keep the reader reading. At its best, it piques the reader's curiosity to read on. At its worst, it gives away an element of the story much too soon. Okay, so here's another example of effective foreshadowing. "He would help me in ways I could not fathom at this time." Now let's turn this effective foreshadowing I just offered you into an ineffective one. Here goes. "He was to lend me the money I needed to have the surgery I required, and so everything turned out all right." What makes this so unacceptable for your memoir is its spoiler quality. Better to string the reader along for a while with foreshadowing as you and your readers wonder if you will be able to gather the funds to have the surgery. For more info, see my 2 videos on plotting a memoir. There are links to them in the description below this video. The other element that is important to you as a memoir writer is suspense. People sometimes wonder what the difference between foreshadowing and suspense is. Well, foreshadowing suggests something is about to happen, something that the author knows will happen. It is an element of the story that has its place in the life of the writer. Suspense is more focused on describing what is happening with the suggestion of dire consequences or of indescribably wonderful results. Suspense can be used effectively to add both interest for the reader during the reading itself of the story and to pull the reader along to the end of the memoir. Here are two examples of suspense. One is a big example and the other is just a small one. If your story has to do with climbing a rock face, you would want to emphasize the danger of climbing. You would describe the distance between rock footholds and perhaps how narrow the footholds were, and then you would make allusions to how high you are and how injured you would be if you fell. You could even be killed. This is all suspense. Ultimately, none of this actually happened to the writer, but it could have. With your use of suspense, the reader experiences the chills and thrills of the rock climb. This will keep the reader reading. The reader knows, of course, that you didn't die, but you might still have fallen and have sustained serious injury. The reader's only way to know what happened is to read on, a great benefit of using suspense. Of course, suspense does not have to be about a dramatic occurrence. It could have been as small as wondering if your baking powder was still good. If it wasn't, what could be done about the birthday party you were hosting? Would you have time to run to the store for more baking powder, or perhaps to give in and to go to a bakery for a cake? Now, this second example is an example of something rather small suspense. Whether big or small, suspense builds excitement and tension. Obviously, not every part of a memoir can be chock full of suspense, but a judicious use of suspense now and then can perk up a story. As a memoirist, you are encouraged to make use of fiction technique, but let me repeat, you must never delve into fiction. If you are climbing a 15-foot incline with plenty of vegetation and ledges to grab a hold of, you cannot, for the sake of suspense, make the slope into Yosemite's El Capitan. You just can't. Fiction is simply not allowed in a memoir, but the judicious use of foreshadowing and suspense certainly is. I recommend it highly. If you would like to explore receiving help with your memoir on any aspect of memoir writing, know we offer a 30-minute complimentary get-to-know-you coaching consultation. The link to a free consultation is in the description below. Before you go, please hit the subscribe button at the bottom left of this video and click on the bell at the top of your screen. Subscribing brings you this memoir writing content on your YouTube homepage and recommendations bar. Clicking the bell at the top of your screen brings you notifications of new content, often of bonus material I send to subscribers. Be sure your bell selection is at all. Oh, and before you go, here's the bonus I promised you, a link to our video. This is how to keep your readers interested. And remember, inch by inch, it's a cinch, yard by yard, it's hard. Good luck writing your memoir.